Hello, so today's video is another episode in my full bottle worthy series. I'm just going to talk through 10 different fragrance samples from 9 different fragrance brands. All of these are relatively new releases, and I'm just going to say whether I can see each of these as part of my own collection or whether I can see something that would attract other people to these fragrances. So if you've not seen me before, I'm Claire. I talk all about fragrance on this channel. I'm a scientist in real life, so I love talking about perfume science, I love talking about perfume history, and I love doing fragrance reviews as well. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already subscribed, then please do consider subscribing. And if you do like this kind of content, then please do press the like button. So a few of these samples did come from my friends here on YouTube, so specifically Lizzie at Rose & Jones and also Emily. And I'd just like to thank both of those people, but also a few of these samples I did just buy. So let's get on with this. What's the first fragrance? So first up, we have Dior's Purple Glow. I think this fragrance was the most popular of the line of releases of 3 from Dior recently. And I've seen really mixed reviews on this, and I was so intrigued to get to try this. I had tried it in store, but you never really know until you get a sample, do you? So this one, I'm shocked a little bit by how gentle it is. I think this one just doesn't have much oomph to it, and that's disappointing. So this opens with a slight fruitiness, but it's very indefinite. It's just kind of a sweetness, and there's also a lot of powderiness. The powderiness is the iris, I think, mainly, but there is a little bit of violet here too. The iris is really all about the texture rather than that natural smell of iris. It does make me think of lipsticky fragrances, but it's definitely not as definite as something like French Kiss by Guerlain, which has similar notes. Or like something like Insolence is not as powdery or strong as Insolence. It doesn't project like Insolence. And there's also something a little bit retro here. There's something a little bit taking me back to the 2000s almost. I guess Iris and Violet were very in around that time period. Maybe that's why I think of that time of my life. But again, I feel like if this had been released in the 2000s, it would be much more punchy. There would be something much more present about it. Sadly for me, this one had terrible longevity, and it just was a skin scent from quite early on for me. I do like this, but I do think this is something that I would choose to wear to bed. And really for this price point, I want a bit more oomph from my fragrances. So this one is Dior's Purple Glow. So the next fragrance is the new release from Parfums de Marly, and that's Athénaïs. So this fragrance, I've not really heard anybody talk about this, and I guess I probably don't watch the right channels to hear people talk about this one. But it doesn't strike me as something that's taking the world by storm. So I was still intrigued to try this one. I'm always intrigued by Parfums de Marly fragrances because they're such a very successful brand. I'm always fascinated by what does well for them. So this fragrance, initially, it smells very soft and very floral. It's very much a smooth feeling floral in the very beginning, but it transitions very, very quickly. So it transitions from something quite magnolia-like to something more orange blossom-like, something quite powdery, but also almondy. There's some tonka here, so that gives it a powdery sweetness alongside a muskiness. And there's also something in the midpoint that smells almost a little bit like benzoin or something more resinous, perhaps. Really, in the midpoint too, you get something that resembles a marshmallow-like sweetness. I guess that's the orange blossom, perhaps the muskiness, and perhaps the almondy tonkariness mixing to give me that impression with the vanilla. Really, by the dry down, it's a powdery sweetness, but it's quite a dense powdery sweetness with cashmere. I felt like this one lasted incredibly long on my skin. This was still going 7-8 hours later, and it was quite a strong fragrance. One spray really, and it was still projecting. I just don't think this one is necessarily for me, but I can see if you like powdery fragrances, you might really enjoy this one. So that's Athénaïs from Parfums de Marly. So the next fragrance is the new release from Versace, and it's called Crystal Emerald. So I tried this one in store a few months back, but I like to get a sample to try them out properly. So what did I think of this one? Well, I feel for me this has not really changed my judgment when I tried it in store. And really what I got was a liquid soap. This is so soapy that when I smell it close up, it actually makes me feel like I'm tasting liquid hand soap. This really does have a little bit of a bergamot aspect to it in the opening, and there's also a bit of a green rose, fresh rose to it. It's very subtle though. It's mainly just a kind of hand soap smell to me, and for that reason this one's not for me. But I think if you like super clean fragrances, this might be something you might want to try. It's something that does last a long time. It's basically eternal on me, and it does project as well. I can really smell this one. It's quite a strong fragrance. So that's Crystal Emerald by Versace. So next up is the new fragrance from Zoologist, which is Orchid Mantis. So this fragrance, it's a very vintage powdery floral. I think if you don't like vintage fragrances, you're probably not going to like this one, because it does take me back to 80s, perhaps even the early 90s. It's that kind of vintage powdery floral. So this opens with some green, slightly waxy ylang ylang, and also a bit of a menthol aspect. It smells almost like a eucalyptus. It's got a freshness to it, but also a greenness. It's not quite eucalyptus, it's not as sharp as that, and it's not quite as medicinal as that, but there is something medicinal about this. Really, as this dries down, it becomes golden and white florals in the form of a powder. It's very much something as well that has a greener aspect to this still. It has a silveryness almost as well. I think that's the oak moss that's coming through. But yeah, this made me think just initially of fragrances like Cacharel's Eden. It made me think of Athénaïs. It did also give me a kind of feeling of 29 High Street from Lush, which I own. But I think if you compare those two fragrances, Lush's 29 High Street is very clean feeling. It's very much like a bath bomb kind of fragrance. And it's really the ylang ylang that is similar with this fragrance. But I think with Lush's 29 High Street, it's very bright feeling. It's got a really real citrusy aspect to it, which this one doesn't have. So Lush's 29 High Street feels cleaner, more energetic, whereas this one feels more vintage, more powdery. Not for me, this one, but I can see if you really like vintage fragrances, if you like Eden by Cacharel, this would really float your boat. So that one is Orchid Mantis by Zoologist. So next up is a fragrance from Jo Malone, and I have seen all the adverts for this, and I don't think the smell of this equates with the adverts. So this one is called Raspberry Ripple, and you know, I was imagining Raspberry Ripple ice cream. I love Raspberry Ripple ice cream. And honestly, I didn't get that. So really what you do get here is a tart red fruitiness. It's almost a little bit like a tart red berry, like a red currant, or maybe even a cranberry. There's something like that here, alongside a bit of a red feeling rose, and then also a muskiness. There's nothing here that makes me think of creaminess. There's nothing here that makes me think of vanilla. There's nothing here that makes me think of ice cream. It's something that just feels quite dry and quite tart in a way. But still, it's something that I really struggled to smell. The first time I tried this, I ended up spraying it 8 times, and honestly, I still couldn't really smell it. I feel like I'm maybe partially anosmic to part of this fragrance. I feel like this is the Emperor's New Clothes on me. I just don't feel like it's very there. And I'm surprised by how this has been advertised, because I don't smell anything that makes me think of Raspberry Ripple. So that is Raspberry Ripple by Jo Malone. So the next fragrance is from a small British indie brand, and they're called Olfactive O. So I've tried a lot from Olfactive O. I've tried their citrus fragrance, which I really enjoyed. I've tried their gourmand fragrance, which I really enjoyed too. And this one's called Floral Smoke. So that's really perfectly describing this fragrance in a way, but I think it misses out the leathery aspect of this. So this is quite a green fragrance when it initially opens. The violet leaf is quite strong, and there's also a slightly green spiced sandalwood, like the sandalwood that's in Santal 33, but slightly more subtle. Really, as this begins to dry down, you get a green kind of oiliness coming in, which I guess is a green floral, alongside quite a leathery aspect to this too. So it smells almost like a mechanic in a leather jacket. It makes me think of somebody who works in a garage. It's got that kind of lived in oily smell to it, alongside a leatheriness. I think this one does have a bit of a smoulder to it, but I wouldn't describe it as smoke. It's like something that's almost extinguished, that's just kind of very gently smoking outside of a fire, like a charred wood almost. I found this one really interesting. I don't think this is necessarily me, but I think this is bang in the middle unisex. I don't think anybody could argue that this is particularly masculine or particularly feminine. I would love to smell this on somebody else. I think this would be just absolutely intoxicating. It makes you smell cool. You just, you know, when you conjure up that kind of image of somebody working in a garage, of someone wearing a leather jacket, and that's just a very cool smell, isn't it? I can imagine someone in a really trendy bar wearing this one and having a huge group of friends around them. It's just one of those fragrances that has a bit of a draw to it because it's so interesting. But yeah, not for me this one, but I do really like it. So that's Floral Smoke by Olfactive. So the next fragrance is from the Infiniment Coty line, which I think has got a lot of traction now. It's something that people are talking about a bit more. So this one is called Encore and Fois. And so this fragrance is really a vanilla fragrance. It really reminded me actually of Nirvana Amethyst, which is on my perfume tray this month. And I sort of did a bit of a double take when I first smelled this. That's how it smells in the opening. It smells like Nirvana Amethyst, so a woody, gentle vanilla. It smells almost a little bit tobacco-y as well. As this begins to dry down, you get more of the benzoin coming in. It's a more ambery kind of smell. It's richer, it's more powdery. It's more like a Guerlain vanilla as this dries down. It makes me think of those kind of Shalimar style vanillas. It makes me think of the benzoin that you get in Shalimar as well, and the amber. But it also does make me think of Spirituese Vanille by Guerlain as well, but it's just a lot more gentle than that. It's still quite a woody feeling vanilla, really, even into the dry down. And it's not something that ever makes me think of fragrances like Mercedes Club Black, because it doesn't really have that kind of aroma chemical twang to it that Mercedes Club Black does. But I think if you really like woody vanillas, if you like Spirituese Vanille, this is a very along the same lines kind of fragrance. The sad part of it about this one is that it doesn't have the longevity really with it, and I can see this one being a little bit of a disappointment on that front. But I do think this is a nice kind of slightly Guerlain style vanilla. So that is Encore and Fois by Infiniment Coty. So next is another fragrance from the Infiniment Coty line, and this one's called Après l'amour. So Après l'amour is a fragrance that really opens very strangely to me. It makes me think of those Haribo sweets, those red heart Haribo sweets, those foamy sweets. And I don't really know why I'm getting that, but there's something almost a little bit cherry-like here in the opening. And I guess that's maybe making me think of those sweets. It's a red fruitiness to me. But alongside that, you get a really deep, dark, slightly golden, but more of a brown feeling tobacco. It smells almost like when you're rolling a cigarette and you've got that kind of very fresh feeling, almost slightly damp feeling, very thin feeling tobacco. It smells like that, combined with that fruitiness, but also with a leatheriness and also a syrupy aspect to this. So there's a syrupy amber kind of richness to this fragrance, alongside a booziness and then a leatheriness as well. The booziness, I guess, could be something to do with the syrupiness, could be some aspect of the amber, could be something to do with the fruitiness. There's something here that smells purple in the dry down. It smells almost like a plum or a dark fruitiness. Still in the dry down, you do get that kind of slight Haribo-esque feeling from this, but you get a bigger hit from the tobacco, you get a bigger hit from the leather. And it's just a very long-lasting fragrance, much more long-lasting than Encore and Fois. So I think this one is perfectly unisex, and I would love to smell this on somebody else. I don't think this is necessarily me, but I think this is incredibly sexy. And again, it's something you'd smell on a night out in a bar. It's something that would make you want to talk to someone, I think. So this one is Après l'amour by Infiniment Coty. So next is a fragrance from Van Cleef and Arpels, and I think this one's been out a while. I had tried it in store, but again, I'm happy to have a sample so I can talk about it in a video. So this one is Moonlight Cherry. So this fragrance, when I first tried it in store, it struck me as so similar in the opening to Lost Cherry that I began to think, is this a Louise Turner fragrance? Has she duped her own fragrance? I don't know who is the perfumer for this scent. If you do know, please do let me know down below. But I wouldn't be surprised if it were Louise Turner. So this really has that kind of sweet, sticky, red cherry, maraschino cherry opening alongside a black cherry as well in the opening. It's also got a booziness, and there's also an almondy aspect to this. So it makes me think not quite of amaretto, but of something slightly darker than that. But the almond really is very punchy in the beginning. It's almost a little bit marzipan-like. Really, as this begins to dry down, you get a powderiness coming in, and you also get something that almost smells a little leathery to me. It does really capture what it's meant to. It is a moonlight cherry. It is a cherry by night. And I can definitely see why this one would have its fans. It's less sweet, less sticky than something like Lost Cherry, but it still does have that delicious aspect to it. And it is a gourmand, but without being something that is cloying or difficult to wear. I like this one. I can't see me picking this one up because I do have other cherries in my collection, but I do think this one is a lovely fragrance. That's Moonlight Cherry by Van Cleef & Arpels. So the final fragrance is one from Kayali, and this is Kayali's Oudgasm Chocolate Oud 11. So I'm feeling really behind with Kayali fragrances. I haven't tried any of this Oudgasm collection other than Tobacco Oud, and I think Rose Oud as well I've tried. But this one is from the newer line of fragrances within that collection, I think. So this, I was expecting chocolate and I was expecting oud, and I didn't really get chocolate at all. I didn't get cocoa even. I got something powdery for sure. I got something warm. I didn't necessarily get oud either. I got a warm, woody, ambery kind of smell alongside a bit of a sweetness. There's some caramel here, but it doesn't smell like caramel in real life. It smells like caramel smells in fragrances. So like just a general kind of sweetness that doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't ever really make me ever think of caramel. There's also a bit of a green, cooked, hot apple skin smell to me as well here. And that I find really off-putting. I don't like hot apple skins even to eat. So smelling them in a fragrance just turns my stomach slightly. I think this, if you do like fragrances like Angel Share, you might really enjoy this. If you like fragrances like Casablanca by Swiss Arabian, you might also really enjoy this. Those two fragrances are just not for me, I'm afraid. And this one is even more not for me. So this is Kayali's Oudgasm Chocolate Oud 11. So that's the final fragrance in this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, then please do press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please do let me know if you tried any of the fragrances that I've featured in this video and what you think of them. I'd be really interested to know your thoughts. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.